Hey everybody, welcome to day 2 of the nervous system notes. So the other day we spoke about the structure of the nervous system. The sensory nerves go in, the motor nerves go out, and in between them is an interneuron found primarily in the brain or spinal cord, and they're going to kind of be the go-between. And then we finished up with the structure of the neuron. Today we're going to pick up with the actual impulse of how one neuron sends a signal to another one. So we talked about the dendrites, which go into the cell body, and the axons that leave the cell body. So now let's talk about the axons. So the axons, once again, are going to, whoops, what happened? We lost our pen. The axon is going to be, let's say that's your dendrites right there. That's your cell body right there. There's your axon. And it's going to end in these things called axon terminals. Now, the axon terminals, we're going to zoom in on them in a little bit, but they're going to contain neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that will tell one nerve cell, tell another nerve cell what to do, or a muscle cell. So if you remember the acetylcholine from the muscular system, that was a neurotransmitter. But here we're going to be only within the nervous system. The axon terminals are separated from each other, or from the dendrite of the next axon, by this thing called the synaptic cleft, or you may just know it as the synapse, and that's a space between two neurons, or between a neuron and a muscle, but it's a space. So if one cell ends there and another cell starts right there, the synapse is that, or the synaptic cleft is that space right there. So how does it work? Well, you have to have a cell that initiates the impulse and a cell that receives it. So this would be your presynaptic cell. This would be your postsynaptic cell. Your presynaptic cell are going to have these vesicles, and in them are going to be these neurotransmitters. And the postsynaptic cell is going to have a receptor for the neurotransmitter. So the signals are sent by the presynaptic, and they are picked up by the postsynaptic. And you need very special receptors, because if you don't have the correct receptor, you can forget it. So let's say that a triangle is the shape of the neurotransmitter. That happens to work. Doesn't want to draw a triangle. That happens to work because this receptor is the triangle shape. But if anything is a circle, it's not going to stop there because the receptors do not match. Now, the neurotransmitters are released with the help of the ion calcium. When the calcium enters the axon terminal, that is what's going to trigger the release of these neurotransmitters. You'll see it in a second. So this, once again, is your presynaptic. This one is your postsynaptic. There are your receptors. These are kind of like a little bit more U-y or round. And what's going to happen is that calcium is going to come in through these special calcium channels, which is going to send the vesicle, it's this vesicle thing right here, to release the neurotransmitter. So the signal in this case is going that way. You have your axon terminal of one and your dendrite of the next cell. So remember, from one cell to the other, and it only goes in one direction. It's very, very, very important. Now, what if one nerve cell tells two nerve cells what to do? That is actually very efficient. You have to think about it, because if every cell told only one cell what to do, you'd never get anything done. So in multiple neurons, more than one nerve can be excited by a single presynaptic. So in this case, I have one pre and I have two posts. This once again allows your brain to get more things done with one signal. Again, very efficient. And in this case, all of these impulses are fast, 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 fast. We're talking about like hundredths of a second fast. No joke. Now, remember we talked the other day about the axon? So the axon is this tube, and we'll talk more about exactly how it works in the next video. But the signal, let's say, is going to go that way. Well, the axon is surrounded by these lipid-like material, this fatty material known as a Schwann cell. Now, the Schwann cell is the individual cells. Together, all of the Schwann cells make up something called the myelin or the myelin sheath. You may see it as both of those words, myelin or myelin sheath. Once again, it's a lipid or fatty material. It looks sort of kind of like a jelly roll, and you'll see it in the next picture. But it has exactly one job, and its job is to speed the impulse. Now, in the event that you have something called multiple sclerosis, these are starting to get worn away, kind of like attacking your own body. And by attacking your own body and losing that myelin, the speed of the signals gets slowed down, or it doesn't even reach as far as it needs to go. So people with MS could potentially lose feeling and or motion in their arms, legs, hands, and feet. It's a rough one. But there's a lot of medications that are slowing that down, so hopefully they'll get that straight in the coming years, hopefully. So if you look here, there's your axon. That's the little branch there. There's my Schwann cell number 1, Schwann cell number 2. As you can see, they're a lipid, and they look sort of kind of like a jelly roll right there. And the gap in between the Schwann cells is known as the node of Ranvier. So that's the gap. So there's your myelin sheath. You can see it. It's all of the Schwannies, and you can see that the impulse is going that way. And they have one job, and that is to speed up the impulse. The neuron cell body, got a couple choices here. Now you got the cell body, which once again, there's your cell body with the dendrites. There's your axon terminals. So the cell body is going to be known as gray matter. It's going to be known as gray matter because it's going to look gray, because it lacks myelin. The white matter, which is going to be your the white matter there, that's going to be your axons. The reason why they're white is because the lipid or fat is white. So that's where they get their name of white matter. The axons are surrounded by a lipid that's a white color. So your gray matter is your cell bodies, and your axons are known as your white matter. And then a ganglia will be a collection of cell bodies that is outside of the central nervous system. Most of the cell bodies are in the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Now, we talked about this already, so I didn't ask a question on it on the review. But once again, let's say that's the receptor. The signal that goes in is your sensory. Your central nervous system is where your interneuron is. And then you know that the motor is going to go out. So motor nerve goes out, sensory nerve goes in, and it's always that way. We'll see it more in what's known as a reflex arc, but we'll see that later on. Sensory is afferent, motor is efferent. Don't forget that. You'll see those words on some review materials. And the interneuron, this once again is a big deal. We talked about it briefly, yes, the other video yesterday, but here, this is all about the connection between the sensory and the motor. If you didn't have this connection, your nerves would short circuit, and that would be a problem. Once again, they're called interneurons or association neurons. They're going to be found in the central nervous system, and their major job is to connect the sensory and the motor neurons with each other, but without letting them crisscross. And if you look at this picture, this is kind of it all wrapped up. There's your receptors, which are here, and your sensory goes in. That's your interneuron right there. This happens to be in your spinal cord this time, but again, that's your central nervous system. And it leaves through a motor neuron, which is going to tell your body what to do. And your body knows what to do on your muscles or glands, otherwise known as effectors. So hopefully that was helpful. Oop.